Well, hey, everybody. Getting ready to record episode 147 of Mike in the Midwest for the Patreon supporters of the Be Our Guest podcast. Or if you are lucky enough to just catch us here on YouTube, you get a little bonus content. I know. If you're watching on YouTube, you get it for free, but hopefully you're supporting us on Patreon as well. You only get the podcast if you support us on Patreon, but I also put it on YouTube. All right, let's do this. Episode 148. Here we go. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 148 of Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. Of course, my name is Mike Rallman, host of the Be Our Guest podcast, which you can find Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday on the podcast feed. You know that because you're a Patreon supporter. And thank you so very much for that. It is very, very much appreciated. You allow us to do, well, to put the podcast out that many times a week. Most shows come out once a week or even less than that. And we are blessed that we get to put the show out multiple times a week for over 15 years. And I can tell you, I love doing the shows, and I've made some amazing friends, not just with my co-host, but with our podcast family, our listeners. And you guys, especially the Patreon supporters, have reached out with some amazing emails and messages over Facebook and Twitter and all kinds of social media, and just really some kind words over the past couple of weeks with the show that I put out a couple of weeks ago with the accident that happened here in our community. And just wanted to lead off the show one more time by just saying thank you for being the tremendous people that you are. Our podcast is more than just a group of Disney fans. I think over the past 15 years, we've really turned into a family, and this little group right here definitely demonstrates that. So thank you very much for lifting me up and supporting me. I appreciate that, and continue to love on each other. I think that's an amazing thing. So what's going on around here? Well, today, as I look out the Be Our Guest podcast studio's bright window to my left, it's a little drizzly and it's cooled off a little bit here. It's been warm, but one thing that hasn't cooled off is our St. Louis Cardinals. Now, a couple weeks ago, we were about to lose it here in St. Louis because the Cardinals could not win a game. They were the bad news bears of Major League Baseball, and I'm still not a believer in our manager, but at least we're starting to win baseball games. We may not end up as the worst team in baseball this year. We're still in last place, which is hard for a St. Louis Cardinals fan to say. We are still in last place, but we're making a move. We won last night 18-1 against the first place Brewers. I know this isn't a sports talk show, but we're excited because we're moving in the right direction. So look out. The Cardinals are on the move. But yeah, the weather is a little bit cool today. It's cooled off now. We are, we just have Mother's Day. So we're getting into summer. We're not quite there. Memorial Day is coming up here, in a couple of weeks. So we're getting close to the end of the year, which is going to be what we talk about here on the podcast in a few minutes, because I think I have a fun topic that, again, I want to get your feedback on, because it's a really abstract thing that I think hits us in concrete ways throughout the year and throughout our lives, actually. But I want to get your feedback on it, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So what else is going on around here? So we celebrated Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day one last time to all the moms and mom figures out in our audience. And by mom figures, I mean the folks who might be teachers. Because even as a male teacher, I felt like I had to mom my students all the time. Like, there were times where when I was a teacher, they would come up to me and say, "Dad." I'm like, "Mr. Rallman, I'm not your dad. I promise you I'm not your dad. I can tell you that." I even got called mom a couple times because they would just run up. And but really, if you are, a Sunday school teacher, a elementary school teacher, a daycare worker, whatever it is, somebody who takes care of kids, you are a maternal figure. And I hope you had a great Mother's Day and got to rest, not have to do the dishes, not have to do anything, not have to plan, not have to get up early, not have to clean up after breakfast in bed that maybe your kids brought you. I don't know. Hope you just had a great day and got to do what you wanted. Maybe you got a Disney vacation. Doubt it, but that'd be awesome. So anyway, what's going on around here? We had Mother's Day, and here's how it goes, right? When you get to be my age, you kind of get lucky, because you guys know I have two daughters, Paige and Mallory. Paige is 26 and Mallory's 15. So Paige lives in Chicago. She is the director of basketball operations for the University of Illinois Chicago basketball program. So she runs that program up there with the head coach. And this past week is their dead week in the NCAA for her division of basketball for the NCAA for basketball recruiting. There can be no contact with recruits for this week. So they can't call recruits, they can't reach out on social media, they can't go visit, they can't come in, recruits can't have any contact at all. Coaches, programs, nothing. So because of that, they shut down their program for the week. So the coach goes on vacation, the head coach, I think she went to Mexico. Paige decided to come home for the week. So that was awesome. You know, we don't get to spend a whole lot of time with her because she is really, we're so proud of her, right? She's, when we see her, obviously technology is a great thing. We have her on Find My on our iPhones, and she's always in her office at the university, at the gym or the athletic complex. You know, we'll see her there at 10 o'clock at night. You know, you hear these stories of like football coaches, right? That are, you know, that stay at the athletic complex planning and stuff and just working really hard to make their program the best it can be. And you know, Paige is, I believe, doing that for her program. And I think the coaching staff is a whole cohesive unit are doing that. They took a program a couple of years ago that won 3 games to last year winning 19 games, one of the biggest turnarounds in the country. And now the expectation is, well, what do you do next? I think this next year, year 2, is going to really be a challenge. I had that talk with Paige, you know, okay, so what do you do now? It's going to be, you're going to have high expectations on you, but it's really hard to win more than 19 games in a tough conference, but they can do it. But you're really going to have to, you know, be careful and really be detail oriented in everything you do over the summer, especially in preseason and conditioning. Cause you know, when you go from a team that has won 3 games, the expectation is that I mean, you can double your wins by getting to 6. I mean, they killed it by winning 19. But now if you win 10 games, that's a failure, right? So it's going to be a challenge this year, but I mean, they're up to the challenge. Paige always steps up and her coach always steps up. And I believe in them. They're going to have a good year, but you know, they're hard workers and they know what's going on, but I'm just excited for them. But this year is going to be interesting because they had such a successful season that it's going to be, you know, it's one of those things like if you go out and you run a PR in a race as a runner and you just kill some time, you know, like sometime that you could not believe you could actually achieve. It's really hard to go out in the next race and get, you know, achieve that time again or beat it. You know, sometimes you want to like gradually make incremental achievements along the way, not blow it out of the water. So we'll see. They're going to do great. But wow, did they have a good season last year? And I can't wait to see what they do this year. Anyway, she was home for the week because they were having it was called their dead week. So it was great having her here. Now, let me just give you a little advice as a parent. Again, I know with Ricky, she has the baby, right? She has Lucy, a couple months old at this point. I'm always trying to give her advice of what's going to happen in her life over the next couple of decades. I will tell her this, and I will tell parents that are in our audience that have kids that have not left for college yet, that are like still at home, that have not left. The day your kid leaves for college and goes away is going to be one of the hardest days of your life. Paige, I remember the day that we dropped Paige off to Mizzou. Now, Mizzou is not far away. Mizzou is 2 hours down Interstate 70. It's not far. It was the in-state school. And we are season ticket holders for the football program. And we had grown up going to Mizzou with her all the time. We always went to football games. We were always out there. We were always out, you know, it wasn't a big deal. But when we actually took her stuff, her clothes, her computer, her, you know, all her stuff and dropped her off and decorated her little dorm room. And then we left and she didn't come home with us. My wife and I cried the whole way down Interstate 70 for the whole 2-hour ride home. It was rough. And I'll tell you this, let me tell you one thing. Paige left this morning. She was going to leave last night, but she had, we got her a bicycle. We promised her a bicycle a long time ago and she hadn't been here. And so she wanted a bicycle to ride up in Chicago up because she lives right in the city where she could ride along that park there along Lake Michigan. So we got her a bicycle And then she ordered a bike rack for the back of her car. She has like a sedan, just a basic car, and it didn't work right. So she had to get a different one yet last night late so she could get the bike back to Chicago. So she didn't go because it was like late and she didn't want to drive at night. Like leave the house like at 10 o'clock because it's a 5-hour drive. So she left this morning. I will say, point is, it's still hard as a parent when your kid leaves after a week, even when they're 26. Like it was great having her home. It was great having Paige and Mallory, the two sisters, together. Like they get along so well. Paige would go pick Mallory up from her high school. They would hang out. They would go, Paige would take Mallory to the gym to work out. I mean, it was great having them together. It was great having my whole family under the roof there for 7 days. It doesn't get any easier when they leave. So that's kind of what I'm going through this morning. But, I'm glad that she's going back to Chicago doing what she loves. It's awesome. She's an awesome young woman. But this little piece of parenting advice here on Mike in the Midwest, it never gets easier when they take off on you. All right. So let's hit the feedback from last week's show before I get you all sad. It'll be fine by the time I have my turkey sandwich for lunch today. It's just one of those things, right? You're proud of them, but man, when they leave, it's like, do you gotta leave? I mean, could you not? Like, there's colleges you could run in St. Louis, but no, she's in the right place. It'll be fine. I was just being selfish. Okay, so remember last week we talked about, because again, I was a kid who had severe asthma as a child. I mean, always in the emergency room. I missed so many Halloweens because I was always sick in the emergency room or in the hospital. Had to get allergy shots twice a week. I was always in the doctor's office, and I was always at the pharmacy getting Decadron, I think was the name of the drug I had to always get filled, and a couple of other things. And so I was always going through our pharmacy, and the pharmacy had that one aisle that had like the little cheap toys. And we talked about that last week. And I still remember how much how much joy I got out of that aisle. And I listed some of those toys, and I wanted to see if you guys remembered some of these. So here's some of the feedback we got from this last week. Craig Burnett. Thanks, Craig, for being here. He says, this one brought back some memories. Where I grew up, we had a small shopping center at the end of our street. I had to cross one road, but was allowed to walk up there by myself at a pretty early age. We had a grocery store, a pet store, a bar and grill, a laundromat, etc. Later on, we even had an arcade, which I obviously frequented. By the way, if you don't know, and I've talked to Craig has a whole set of arcade games in his basement down in Louisville, Kentucky, which I got to go see because it looks amazing. And I have one up arcade machine over in my basement, a Pac-Man that also has Galaga and a few other games, but I want to see his basement. Anyway, back to Craig. He says the pharmacy was in the back, but I really didn't care about that. There were several aisles that were meaningless to me, but the main aisle was the main aisle with the cashier was also the aisle with the candy, the comics, the baseball cards, toys, etc. It was fantastic. Every type of candy bar, gum, jawbreakers, wax lips, candied necklaces, etc. The next aisle did have a freezer with ice pops, push-ups, drumsticks, etc. But that's about as far as I wandered away from that main aisle. Towards the back of that main aisle is where you could find the toys and the comics. My favorite was probably the balsa wood gliders and the planes. And you were right. You were living large if you got one of the rubber band powered propellers. You see, some of them they didn't have it. It was just a glider, balsa wood glider. But if you got one that had the little clip on rubber band, wind up little propeller, that was the deluxe version. I mean, it probably cost $1.49 instead of 99 cents, and you were just fancy. All right, back to Craig. I think our drugstore had all of those things you mentioned, but we also had a decent section of model kits too. We had those actually. Now you say that. Let's see. Cars, planes, tanks, etc., and yo-yos. When I had a little more money, I could afford to buy those models, but most of the time I think I was buying those gliders and maybe a kite. Of course, I knew everyone that worked there. In fact, my dad still smoked when I was in grade school, and he would send me up the street to buy him cigarettes. Different times for sure. Looking back, I was very fortunate to have a little shopping center that I could easily walk up to and hang out a bit. but that drugstore was the place that has a very special memory for me. Craig, that is awesome. Thank you. You know what? So the place for me, I think I talked about this on one of the previous shows. I can't remember. We've done 140 of them at this point. Plus, my grandma worked at a grocery store that I could ride my bike to called Tomboy. And so I go up to Tomboy, and they kind of had an aisle like this as well. It was an independent grocery store, wasn't a chain. And my grandma was a checker there. And so after school, I'd ride up, and they had a little Pac-Man machine by the door. They had like 2 video games. I remember they had it wasn't Mr. Do, it was yeah, it was Mr. Do. It wasn't Dig Dug, it was Mr. Do and a Pac-Man right by the checkout, right by the, exit actually. And yeah, grandma worked there as a checker. So I just go up there and see grandma. Oh man, miss grandma. Thanks, Craig. Great memories. Okay, Trisha, sorry about your Brewers last night. 18-1. Oh my goodness. Okay, Trisha says, we had everything you mentioned, and I'm a decade younger than you. Just goes to show how great older toys were. A couple of things we got were playing cards or Uno and generic Barbie dolls. This did trigger a few memories, though. My brother and I played an April Fool's joke on my parents, pretending he had gotten gum stuck in my hair when it was really just silly putty. I also remember my brother dropping the parachute army men from the loft of my childhood home. They had 50-50 odds of the chute actually opening. Perhaps that's why I'll never go skydiving. That is so true. Exactly. We used to love getting those parachute army men, and like they would have, you buy it and it would have like a rubber band with a little plastic thing, and you take the rubber band off, and then you just the whole thing was right. You had to get high enough to be able to throw him. Because if you just sat on your, like, if you went in your backyard and you just threw the army man up, I mean, I had an arm, like I was a pitcher in Little League, and I was a pretty decent pitcher. But even me, if you're standing flat on the ground, you really can't throw him high enough that he gets enough altitude that it has enough time for the whole system to happen, right? That he gets up high enough, he hits the apogee of his flight, the parachute deploys, and he floats down. Like you almost needed to climb like on a roof of a 2-story house or something. You had to get up like 50 feet. And I just remember when somebody would get one of these, that was always the mission. Like, whose dad has a tall ladder, who lives in a 2-story house. I remember one time we went up to Bangor Park, which is where the local swimming pool in our neighborhood. And so the swimming pool had an observation deck, which was over the swimming pool, and it was probably about 50 feet up. It was super tall. And then on top of that, we tried to jimmy our way up under the roof. And I mean, it's a wonder we didn't kill ourselves. Just to throw, like, how much were those parachute men? Like $1, maybe 50 cents. We were stupid. But I mean, this was childhood, right? I mean, this was in the age of, you didn't have cell phones. This is what we did. Because I mean, okay, we're going to talk about this in a minute, but like, you got out of school Memorial Day and you didn't go back to school basically till Labor Day, and you had nothing to do that whole summer. And summer felt like it took forever. And this is the kind of stuff we would do to entertain ourselves. My parents didn't check on us. We would go out in the morning. I guess it would be about 9 o'clock, maybe earlier. And we would not come home till dark. And I mean, we'd come home and eat lunch and go back out on our bikes. We would do this kind of stuff all the time. It is a wonder that I didn't break a bone every day or get killed. Like the stuff that I think about that my friends and I did like this, climbing on top of like 50-foot buildings, like, and the cops never said anything. Like, I'm sure like a park ranger had to have seen us. I mean, if they didn't, what were they doing? They're not doing their job. Anyway, great memories there, Trisha. Okay, Jennifer Perry. Thanks for being here, Jennifer. She says, hey, Mike, as a pharmacist, this is definitely not where I thought you were headed in this episode. LOL. I definitely remember going to the toy aisle at the pharmacy when I was a kid. In addition to the things you mentioned, I remember getting those blister cards of plastic dollhouse furniture. There were chairs and tables and baby cribs and tiny plastic babies. I also remember that when I was sick and needed a prescription, my mom would buy me a coloring book and crayons. It was an inexpensive remedy, but somehow seemed to make things better. That's exactly right. Now, I wouldn't get the coloring books, but what my grandma would always get me, like I think I mentioned this last week, was those activity books. It'd be a big old book with like seek and finds and crossword puzzles and where you had to put your pin down and make it through a maze from one side to the other, and it might look like a dinosaur or something. You had to, make it through. I love those things, like anagrams. Like, it was just a bajillion kind of word games, like in a one big activity book. Whenever I got one of those were the best. But you're right, Jennifer. I wonder. So you're a pharmacist. I mean, I wonder if, I would imagine that pharmacies still sell a lot of this stuff. And that's a good point. Like, when kids are sick, I mean, obviously that's when they're going to the pharmacy, probably, unless it's preventative. That that's a good idea. Like, you're sick, but we can give you like a little toy that's not expensive to maybe help you feel better. That's a good idea. I like that. Nice. Okay, we have one more thing over here, one more piece of feedback. And it's from Christine Hood. Christine, thanks for being here. I appreciate you very much. Says, hey, Mike, I missed out on commenting last week, so sorry for your community's loss, and especially Mallory, so hard to go through. I wanted to comment about the baseball announcers and how much their voices can take you back. We had Harry Callis and Richie Ashburn here in Philadelphia for years calling the Phillies games. So many memories of leaving the stadium early. Dad had to beat the crowd. I remember that. And listening to the rest of the game on the AM radio on the ride home, and how much fun was our Phillies 93 run to the World Series. They had a ball. I still remember 93. Was that not the Joe Carter home run year? I think it was. I shouldn't have said that. I am so sorry, Christine. I know we've had just bring up 1985 with us and the Royals because we lost 2 that year. Anyway, we still had Harry for the 2008 World Series. The announcers they have now are great, but nothing beats Harry and Richie on a warm summer night. Christine, you couldn't have said it better. It's like an uncle, it's like uncle for us, Mike Shannon, or Uncle Jack Buck, just dropping in and hanging out on your porch every Saturday night, or every summer night, Monday night. Like, today's Tuesday, we play the Brewers tonight. I'll be honest, here's something, and Trisha will appreciate this. I emailed with her, is that when the day Mike Shannon passed away, I have the MLB app on my phone. It's called MLB at Bat. Now, I don't buy the video package, which is like $150 a year. That's too rich for my blood. But I am a tried and true radio guy. I pay $19.99 a year for the whole season, $20, and you get all the radio calls for every baseball team, both home and away. I think that's one of the best deals ever. For $20 for the entire season, you get every team's radio broadcast for the whole year. So I immediately thought of Bob Uecker, because he was a Cardinal, and he's a treasure, and he calls the Brewers games. And so that day I listened to Bob Uecker call a couple innings of the Brewers, and he is just he was doing an ad for some kind of sausage or bratwurst, and like he's made for Wisconsin. And that's like Mike Shannon was made for St. Louis, doing Budweiser commercials. I don't even drink beer. I grew up in a Baptist family where, you don't drink alcohol, you don't drink beer. And I've kind of backslid on that, and I feel bad about that. But it's one of those things, like, he was as St. Louis could be. And it was just, he is Mike Shannon was as St. Louis as the Arch. And it was just sad to see him go. But you called it, Christine. Like, that is just, that sound, because he's still in commercials, because there's commercials where they use his voice. And it just, it's like hearing my grandpa. It's just like, it's like a part of the family. So you called it. Thank you for that great memory. All right, let's get to today's topic. It's not a long one, but it's something I think we can all relate to. I try to give you memories and things that we all share as friends and family here. And I just wanted to talk about anticipation. That word, anticipation. This kind of stuff I used to do with my class too, to get us thinking about things. So we have a pretty big event coming up here with the podcast family, and some of you are going to be sharing this event with me, and I'm super excited for this. We have been working our tails off here, a few of us on the podcast, getting ready for this event so we can have a good time. We're doing the Be Our Guest podcast cruise in less than 50 days, July 3rd to the 7th on the Disney Wish. But it doesn't matter. Like, that's what my anticipation is. It's for my next trip to Walt Disney World. We're going down on July 1st and staying a couple nights at Coronado Springs. And the girls haven't been to Walt Disney World in quite a long time. So they are super excited for the trip. And I just want to talk about the idea that anticipation for an event can be just as exciting as the actual event itself. And I just wanted to give a reminder, you guys know these things, but I like to bring these things up sometimes and to say them out loud. I think just as much for me as it is for you, is that don't miss out on the excitement of the anticipation of the event. Enjoy the times that lead up to these events, because if you embrace the pre-time, the pre-part of the event, that can make the event extend longer than it actually is, because we all know that 4-night cruise is going to go by in like 10 seconds. Disney cruises go so fast. Walt Disney World vacations go so fast. Events that you're looking forward to go by in the blink of an eye. But if you enjoy the anticipation of the event, it can extend the whole amazing experience of the overall feeling of it. So I was thinking about the events that we probably share that we have great anticipation for. And I want to see if you share these with me. I'm sure you do, but these are mine. And I want you to give some of yours that I left off the list for next week. Again, patreon.com/BeOurGuestPodcast. Podcast. We'll share them next Tuesday. So first of all, for a big trip, mine's for the podcast cruise. What are you anticipating? What's your biggest one? That's what was on my list. This time of year, how about graduation? You're anticipating that. You're nervous, right? It's kind of a different anticipation. A lot of times before that, you have finals, you have you're getting parties together, you're thinking about family coming into town. It, on the other end of that, maybe you're not graduating, but maybe you're a teacher, the end of the school year, you got a lot of stuff you got to get done. So maybe it's not a, it's a stressful time of year. This time of year, you got to finish grade cards, permanent records. You got to close out your classroom. I know my wife is changing classrooms next year. She's got like 2 or 3 years left and they're making her change her room. So there's a lot of stress this time of year, but you are anticipating actually walking out of the building. But for graduates, you're anticipating those final days. Enjoy them. You will not get to be in that high school ever again. Some of these friends that you think you'll see, if this is for the seniors, some of those people you think you'll see, again, a lot, you won't. It's just the hard facts. These are the best days. You're going to have lots of good days in the future. You're just going to have different days. You're going to have different friends, different days. So enjoy these days. They're special. Here's another anticipatory thing that I always look forward to. This is just me. Being on deck when I played baseball. I saw a picture of Stan Musial the other day, one of my heroes at St. Louis Cardinals, one of the greatest baseball players of all time, number 6. And he was taking a knee and he was on deck, just watching the person hit in front of him. And think about it. A good baseball player is studying the pitcher, is watching the hitter in front of him, watching the umpire, watching all the action. And in his head, he's thinking about, he's getting himself prepared for the event. And so that's what I always tried to do when I was the DH, because that's what I play when I wasn't pitching. I was the DH for my high school. And so when I was on deck, I was always anticipating what the pitcher was going to throw me based on what was happening to the batter in front of me. Were they wild? Were they throwing all strikes? Should I be ready to attack the first pitch? Should I take one because they're all over the place? They're going to drill me. Is this umpire calling nothing? I got a good chance to walk. Is this umpire calling everything that gets within 10 feet of the plate a strike? Should I be that kind of stuff? You got to anticipate. You got to be ready. So when you get into the event, you're locked in. Don't waste the time. Get yourself locked in the on-deck circle. That was baseball. How about the birth of a child? Oh my God, 9 months of scared, being freaked out in my case, but it's anticipation. It's getting ready. Ricky just went through this. It's getting the nursery ready. It's going to the Zap gun at the Babies R Us. I don't even know if that's in business anymore. The store, I guess it's Amazon nowadays. It's the showers. It's oh my God, I can't believe this is going to happen. And then when the night happens, you freak out and it goes by super fast, but it was the whole 9 months of it leading up and then it's over. And then you have a child. It's crazy. But I just remember the anticipation of the birth of your child is just crazy. On the same thing, your wedding. If you're going to get married, holy cow, you got to save the date magnets we mailed out, making the favors for the wedding and the programs. We had an outdoor wedding on a old southern, like it was an old, area like with oak trees and a barn. So we got married outside. So we had fans, and the fans were actually the programs. And Pam came in a horse-drawn carriage, and so we were always worried about the weather. Is it going to be nice? And there was a thunderstorm that night, but it was 1 hour after we got married, thank God, because the storms were rolling in as the preacher was preaching. I mean, but you have all that time leading up that you're anticipating it. But the wedding, I can't, it went so fast, but we enjoyed the time up to it. So you got to anticipate the event. Here's another thing: snowstorms. If you're in the Midwest, I get so jazzed as soon as the weatherman comes on and says, we could get a good snowstorm. I love that. Maybe it's that I'm a teacher, but I loved it when I was a kid. And then like the anticipation is like, I watch my weather apps and like, we'll get like a winter weather advisory. And I'm like, oh yeah, it might happen. And then it gets upgraded. Then it's like, it's a winter storm watch. I'm like, oh, it's getting better. Then when you get like a winter storm warning, it's like, let's go. We're going to get decent snow. And then like, if you get like a blizzard warning, bring it. Here we go. So I love that. Also, how about like Christmas? I love the lead up to Christmas. That when you can first start listening to Christmas music, boom, anticipation for the day. Because Christmas morning is like here and there and gone in like an hour or two. But if you start celebrating Christmas at Thanksgiving or a little bit before, you get that whole month. Because I'm a big Christmas person. You get to enjoy it, anticipate the day. Because Mallory and I are huge Christmas Eve people too. We love going to church on Christmas Eve, candlelight service, and we talk about how excited we are for that for the whole month leading up to it. And so anticipation, New Year's. Think about the anticipation of that. We count down to it as we lead up to it. 10, 9, anticipation there. Here's another one that I have during the Dopey Challenge. I anticipate Marathon Sunday. I look at Thursday, the 5K, Friday, the 10K, Saturday, the half is getting ready. I'm anticipating Sunday. Sunday scares me to death every year. I still don't know if I'm going to finish that marathon. It scares me. It hurts me. It's hard. It's super hard. Every year it's getting harder. I'll be honest. So I anticipate Sunday with fear, and it still makes me almost sick to my stomach. So I am always looking forward to Sunday in a fearful way. Also around here, first Friday Night Lights. We get excited for that as the air starts to cool off at the end of summer. We look forward to the first high school football season. And then what about like engagements? Everybody kind of looks forward to when you've been with somebody for quite a while, you're kind of looking forward to that anticipation of, is it going to happen tonight? Is he going to get down on one knee? What's going to happen with that? You never know. I saw the funniest video last night on Twitter where this couple was at I think it was like the New York Islanders game or something, sitting together in the seats. The guy kisses the gal. He goes out into the aisle and he reaches into his pocket and gets down on one knee. But when he gets down on one knee, he just ties his shoe. Well, the woman had stood up thinking she's getting proposed to. The whole section's like getting around, looking at them. And all he did was tie his shoe, and she was so embarrassed. And it was the funniest video of all time. Wrong anticipation there. So that was my list I came up with, because I could go on forever with this. But what did I miss? And what do you think about the word anticipation? Am I right? I mean, should you always enjoy the anticipation, or is it a false pretense sometimes? Is the event better than the anticipation? What are your thoughts on this? I was just curious, because I am one that I always try to, especially when it comes to trips. I've just learned in my past 20 years of going on trips that if I don't do this I know it's all a mental thing. I'm very much into the mental aspect of sports, especially, but of life in general, is that I get depressed how fast my vacation goes because I look forward to it for so long. Like I just want to have so much fun, and it's like here and there and it's gone, especially cruises. But if I start enjoying my cruise now, like today, because we could talk about it tonight at dinner with Mallory and Pam and talk about, oh, we want to do this. And like, that's part of the cruise experience. It's not the cruise, but it's part of it. We're anticipating the fun. That's going to make it seem like it lasts longer. So what are your thoughts? Patreon.com/BeOurGuestPodcast. Let's talk about it next week. I love you guys. Hope you had a great week, and let's talk about it next week. Again, thanks for your support. It means a lot. You help us, and I hope you enjoy the new platform. We're trying to make it better and better, and you can check it out. We're on Twitch. So please, if you don't mind, we'd love to have some more followers on Twitch. Go over to twitch.tv/Be Our Guest Podcast. Give us a follow on there. We're also on Twitter. You can see the live streams on Twitter. So twitter.com/Be Our Guest Mike, and all the YouTube and Facebook as well. All right. Have a great Tuesday, and we'll see you real soon.